Lyra was only 7 years old when the stars turned against her. She remembered the cold metal walls of the outpost trembling with every explosion. Her small hands gripped the edge of a broken console, her heart pounding like the drum of a distant war. Outside, the sky was red with fire and the air shook with the sound of collapsing towers. The rogue faction had attacked without warning, their ships cutting through the silence like knives. Lyra's father, the emperor of her planet, had commanded the soldiers to protect her. But in the chaos, the defenses fell too fast. She tried to run, but a beam of falling debris blocked her path. Dust filled her lungs and her small legs were heavy with fear. For a moment, she thought this would be the end. Her mind flashed images of her home, of her mother's soft voice, of the gardens where she used to play. She closed her eyes and whispered a quiet wish, to live, to survive, to see the stars again. And then she felt a hand, strong and steady, pulling her from the rubble. She opened her eyes to see a human boy, taller than any child she had ever met, with short brown hair and kind eyes that shone even in the firelight. He did not speak. He only reached for her hand again, guiding her over fallen beams and through the smoke. His uniform was strange, dark, and simple, different from the soldiers around her. But there was no fear in his movements, only calm determination. "Come," he said softly, his voice steady and soothing. "I will keep you safe." Lyra wanted to ask his name, to know who he was, but the roar of explosions made speech impossible. She only followed, trusting him in a way she had never trusted anyone before. He lifted her over a beam, ducked under falling metal, and ran with a speed and confidence that amazed her small mind. In that moment, she forgot everything but the feeling of safety in his presence. They reached a large doorway that had not yet collapsed. The human set her down gently and motioned for her to stay low. She could see the fire through cracks in the walls and the shadows of soldiers running and shouting. One of them spotted her and raised a weapon. The human boy stepped forward, his stance firm, and the soldier faltered. Without a word, the boy moved, and the soldier disappeared from their path as if he had been ignored by the universe. "Stay close to me," the boy said again. "I will not let anything happen to you." Lyra nodded, too scared to speak. She clutched a small pendant that her mother had given her, a gift that she always wore around her neck. The boy glanced at it and smiled faintly as if he understood its meaning, but he said nothing. They moved through the ruins together. Lyra's mind tried to remember everything, the shapes of the walls, the sounds, the fire, but it was all a blur. She only remembered the hand holding hers, the calm voice that never wavered, and the strange hope that grew in her chest. She did not know the boy's name, nor did she know why he had come to save her. All she knew was that he had done something no one else could. Hours seemed to pass. Smoke choked the air, and the sky was a dark orange from the fires burning in the distance. Lyra's legs grew tired and her small body ached, but the human never stopped moving. He carried her over debris when she could no longer walk, shielded her from falling metal, and never once hesitated. Lyra felt a strange warmth toward him, a feeling she could not name. It was trust, yes, but also something more, something like the promise of safety, of life itself. Finally, they reached the edge of the outpost. The ground sloped down into a forest that was mostly untouched by the war. The human placed Lyra gently on a soft patch of grass. She looked up at him, her small face streaked with dirt and tears. "Are we safe now?" she whispered. "For now," he said. "I need to get you home." "Can you walk a little more?" Lyra nodded. She tried to stand, but her legs wobbled. The boy caught her, holding her steady. He glanced back toward the burning outpost, then forward to the forest. His eyes were serious, but there was a softness there too. "You have to trust me," he said. "I know the way." She trusted him. She did not know why, but she knew she could. She followed him into the forest, the sounds of battle fading behind them. Birds cried in the trees, and the air smelled of earth and water. For a moment, Lyra felt a strange peace. The boy did not speak much. When he did, it was to guide her, to warn her of fallen branches, or to tell her to stay low. Lyra tried to remember everything about him, his face, his voice, the way he moved. But the fear of the attack made it hard. Still, she etched him into her memory. He would be with her forever, even if she never saw him again. Night fell while they walked. The forest was dark, and strange sounds echoed around them. Lyra clung to the boy, shivering from cold and exhaustion. He made a small fire to keep them warm and fed her from a ration pack he carried. She had never eaten human food before, but it was warm and simple, and it made her feel safe. "Why are you helping me?" she asked finally, her voice trembling. "You don't have to. I am just a child." The boy looked at her, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "Because it is right," he said simply. "Someone has to protect those who cannot protect themselves. You are worth saving." Lyra did not understand the words fully, but she felt their meaning. She leaned against him, feeling the strength in his arms, and for the first time since the attack began, she slept without fear. The next morning, they continued their journey. The forest gave way to hills, and the boy guided her toward a settlement loyal to her family. They traveled quietly, avoiding patrols and rogue scouts. Lyra noticed how careful he was, how he always seemed to know the safest paths. His eyes never left hers for long, but when they did, he scanned the surroundings with precision and care. When they finally reached the settlement, the boy did not announce himself. He only carried Lyra to the gates and knelt before her family, who had been searching desperately for her. Lyra's parents rushed to her, tears of relief streaming down their faces. They thanked the boy, but he only shook his head. "My duty is done," he said. "She is safe now." Lyra wanted to ask his name, to tell him how much she remembered, but before she could speak, he turned and disappeared into the forest. She ran after him, calling his name, but he was gone, as if he had never been there at all. Years passed. Lyra grew into a young woman, strong and wise, trained to rule and lead her people. She never forgot the human boy who had saved her life. His face was sometimes blurry in her memory, sometimes clear. She remembered his voice, the warmth of his hand, the calm strength that had guided her. She often wondered where he was, if he was alive, if he remembered her. Her parents tried to teach her to forget, to focus on her duties, but she could not. The memory was too strong, too important. She carried it with her, a secret jewel of hope and safety. Sometimes, in quiet moments, she would look at the stars and whisper to herself, "Thank you. Whoever you are, thank you." And she never knew that far away, in a hidden human settlement, the boy had grown into a man named Daniel. He too remembered that day, the small alien girl with wide, frightened eyes. He had often wondered what became of her, never imagining she was now a princess, strong and beautiful, ruling her people. The galaxy had changed in the years since that day. Wars had ended, empires had risen and fallen, and humans were believed to be extinct. Yet the bond forged in that moment of chaos remained unbroken, a silent promise between a human and an alien girl. And soon, fate would bring them together again, under circumstances neither could imagine, in a way that would change the future of the galaxy forever. Years had passed since the day Lyra had been saved. She was no longer the small, frightened girl hiding under rubble. She had grown into a strong young woman, the princess of her planet, carrying the weight of her people on her shoulders. Her hair shone like the night sky, and her eyes reflected wisdom beyond her years. Lyra moved with confidence, her every action guided by duty, yet deep inside, a quiet memory still lingered, the human who had saved her. Her planet was at peace now, part of a large empire that spanned many stars. Yet rumors whispered through the galaxy like a shadow. Humans thought to be extinct had returned, not in small numbers but as a fleet, hidden in distant space, emerging after centuries in exile. Lyra's council was uneasy. Humans were powerful, unpredictable, and for many species dangerous. But for Lyra the thought stirred something strange. She could not explain why. A name had never been given. A face had only stayed in fragments of memory. Yet the feeling, the memory of a kind voice and a strong hand, made her heart beat faster. "Your Highness," said her advisor, Kalen, an older man with silver hair and sharp eyes. "The humans are near. Their flagship is approaching our outer sector. The council fears their intentions." Lyra looked out of the viewing window of the palace tower. In the distance, she saw ships unlike any she had seen before. Sleek, dark, and strong. They moved with purpose, not like pirates or raiders, but like an organized force. Her mind raced. Could this fleet hold the human who had saved her? Could it be possible? "They are humans," Kalen continued. "No one has seen them in centuries. The records say they were wiped out. Yet here they are." Lyra nodded, a strange feeling of anticipation and fear tightening in her chest. "Prepare a welcome," she said softly. "I will meet them myself." Her advisors looked at her in surprise. "Your Highness," Kalen said, "it may not be safe. They are unknown. You cannot be sure of their intentions." "I will be careful," Lyra replied, "but I must see them. There is something. I feel something I cannot explain." And so Lyra boarded the shuttle that would take her to the meeting station. The fleet waited in orbit above a quiet moon. As her ship approached, she could see the human ships clearly now. Their design was simple yet strong, built for speed and battle but also for survival. Lyra felt a strange familiarity, as if the shapes of the hulls carried a memory she did not fully understand. The shuttle docked at the largest ship, a massive vessel that glowed with faint lights along its hull. Guards stood at the entrance, but they did not stop her. A human officer appeared, tall and broad-shouldered, with short brown hair and a serious expression. Lyra felt her heart skip a beat. There was something familiar about him, though she could not yet place it. "Princess Lyra," the officer said, bowing slightly. "I am Commander Daniel Hayes. We are honored to meet you." Lyra's breath caught. The voice, she had heard it before long ago in the fire and smoke of her childhood. Could it be? She studied his face carefully. Brown eyes, strong jaw, calm expression. The memory of a small hand held in a larger one came rushing back. Her heart raced. I am Princess Lyra," she said slowly, her voice trembling. "I am glad to meet your fleet." "And you?" Daniel looked at her curiously. "I am honored, Princess. We come in peace. Our people wish only to live among the stars once more." They moved into a large room for discussions. Other humans were present, soldiers, engineers, and diplomats, but Lyra could not focus on them. She kept her eyes on Daniel. The memory was too strong now. Every movement, every gesture seemed familiar, yet she dared not speak it aloud. Could it be possible? Could this human really be the one who had saved her? The discussions began. The humans offered trade, technology, and knowledge. Many in the council were skeptical, but Lyra listened carefully. She could see the wisdom in their words, the calm logic, and the strength that reminded her of someone she had once known. Hours passed, and Lyra's curiosity grew stronger. Finally, she excused herself from the main council and asked Daniel to accompany her on a short walk through the ship. He agreed politely, unaware of the storm building inside her. They walked through corridors filled with soft light. The hum of the engines beneath their feet was steady and comforting. Lyra's heart beat faster with every step. She searched for the courage to speak the words she had kept hidden for years. "Commander Hayes," she began, her voice soft. "May I ask you something? Personnel?" "Of course, Princess," Daniel replied. His tone was calm, but there was a note of curiosity. "When you were young, many years ago, did you ever rescue a small girl on a burning planet?" Lyra asked, her hands trembling slightly. Daniel stopped. His face paled slightly. I do not understand," he said carefully. Which planet?" She described the outpost, the collapsing walls, the fire, the debris. She described the small girl, the pendant she wore, and the hand that held hers. Daniel's expression changed. His eyes widened in disbelief. He said slowly, "I was there. I remember. I saved a child that day. I never knew she was a princess." Lyra's breath caught. "It was you?" she whispered. "It was really you?" Daniel nodded, still in shock. "Yes, I remember carrying you, guiding you through the fire. I never knew what became of you." Tears filled Lyra's eyes. The memory of that day, the fear, the hope, the warmth of his hand, all of it came rushing back. "I have never forgotten," she said softly. "I remembered your voice, your hand, even when everything else faded." Daniel looked at her, unable to speak. The realization was overwhelming. The girl he had saved had grown into the princess of a great empire, and now she was standing before him, alive and safe, as if destiny itself had brought them together again. For a long moment they simply looked at each other, words unnecessary. The weight of years, the distance between their worlds, and the memories of a single act of kindness hung in the air. Finally, Daniel spoke. You have grown strong. The child I saved is now a leader. I'm honored, Princess. I am humbled." Lyra smiled through her tears. "And I am grateful. You saved my life. Without you, I would not be here. I would not be who I am today." Daniel reached out, hesitating for a moment, then gently touched the pendant around her neck. He recognized it instantly. "I gave this to you," he whispered. "I never thought you would keep it." "I did," Lyra said. "It reminded me of hope, of safety, of the one human who believed in me when no one else could." They stood in silence, the hum of the ship around them. Neither spoke for a while, both lost in the memory of a single moment long ago. Yet in that silence, a bond that had existed for years, unspoken and unbroken, was acknowledged. The council called them back to continue negotiations, but both Lyra and Daniel felt a shift inside. The fear of humans, the suspicion of the unknown, faded slightly. Here was proof that kindness, courage, and humanity could cross worlds and survive centuries. As the meetings continued, Lyra could not focus fully on politics. Her thoughts returned again and again to that day, to the boy who had saved her. Daniel too felt it, an unexplainable connection, a memory that shaped who he had become. That evening, after the discussions, Lyra returned to her chambers. She gazed at the stars outside the window, remembering the fire, the hand that had held hers, and the promise she had never forgotten. She whispered softly to herself, "It is you. It has always been you." Far away, Daniel sat in his quarters thinking of the same memories. He traced the edge of the small pendant he still carried, feeling the weight of the years and the quiet pride of having saved a life without knowing what it would become. He thought of her alive and strong, and a strange hope filled him. Perhaps the galaxy had more to give than war, more to give than pain. Perhaps kindness and courage could survive even across centuries. Neither of them knew what the future held, but both understood that this moment, this meeting, was the start of something larger. Something that could change not only their lives but the fate of the galaxy. And so, the human and the princess stood on the edge of a new beginning, bound by a memory that refused to fade, ready to face the universe together in ways neither could yet imagine. The following days were tense. Lyra moved through the corridors of the human flagship with a mix of curiosity and caution. Though Daniel had been her savior years ago, she was now a princess and diplomat, representing her people. Her every action carried meaning, and the eyes of her council followed her closely. Yet her thoughts kept returning to him, to the human who had saved her life long ago. Daniel, for his part, tried to act professionally. He led her through the ship, showing the fleet's capabilities, the living quarters, and the control rooms. He explained the human fleet's mission, the resources they carried, and their intent to negotiate trade and peace with her empire. But every time he glanced at her, he caught her staring, her eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity, hope, and something he could not yet name. "Princess," Daniel said one evening as they walked through the ship's observation deck, "I know this must be strange for you. Humans have not been seen for centuries. You probably have questions about us, about me." Lyra nodded. She searched for the right words. I have questions, and I also feel something familiar, something I cannot explain. Your voice, your hand. It is like a memory from long ago." Daniel paused, studying her face. The memory of a small alien girl, frightened and alone, flashed in his mind. The fire, the rubble, the promise he had made to protect her. He had never imagined she would grow into a princess, or that he would meet her again like this. "It is strange," he admitted quietly. "I remember saving a child many years ago. I never knew who she became. Could it be you?" Lyra's heart skipped a beat. I believe it is you," she said softly. "The boy who saved me. It was you. I have remembered your voice, your hand, even when everything else faded. I never forgot." Daniel's expression changed, a mixture of awe and disbelief. I cannot believe this. The child I saved is standing here before me, alive and strong. I never imagined this. Never." For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the engine surrounded them, the lights of distant stars shining through the observation window. The memory of fire and fear, of a single hand reaching out in the chaos, bound them together in silence. Finally, Lyra spoke. "I have a question," she said. "Why did you leave? Why did you disappear?" Daniel shook his head. "I could not stay. The battle was not over. I had orders to retreat, and I could not risk both our lives. I never thought I would see you again. I thought I had failed you." "You did not fail," Lyra said firmly. "You saved me. You gave me life. Without you, I would not be here. You are my savior. I will never forget it. Daniel felt a warmth in his chest he had not expected. He had saved her because it was right, not for recognition or reward. Yet now, seeing her, hearing her words, he realized the full impact of his actions. He had given her more than life. He had given her hope, courage, and the chance to grow into the leader she had become. Their conversations grew longer as the days passed. Lyra learned about the human fleet, their culture, and their long exile. Daniel told her about the challenges his people had faced, the hidden colonies they had maintained, and the careful steps they had taken to survive and return. Lyra listened, fascinated. She had always known humans were resourceful, but hearing it from one who had lived through centuries of hardship made it real. One evening, as they stood together on the observation deck again, Lyra spoke softly. "Do you remember the pendant?" Daniel looked down at the small object she held in her hand. It was simple, a small silver charm shaped like a star. He had given it to her that day in the ruins. "I remember," he said. "I thought it was lost. I never imagined you would keep it all these years." "I kept it to remind me of hope," Lyra said. "Of the one human who believed in me when no one else could. It reminded me that kindness exists, even in the darkest moments." Daniel reached out, hesitating for a moment, and touched the pendant lightly. "You have carried this memory for so long. I cannot believe it. It is overwhelming." The next day, Lyra invited Daniel to walk through the gardens of her planet, a rare private moment away from council meetings and negotiations. The gardens were vast, filled with alien flowers and plants, some glowing softly under the twin suns. Lyra moved with grace, but her eyes constantly searched for signs of the past, the memory of the human boy who had saved her life. Daniel followed, careful not to step on the delicate plants. He looked at her and saw the same fear in her eyes. He had seen years ago, now replaced with confidence and wisdom. Yet beneath it all, he saw the girl she had once been, the small child who needed protection, who had trusted him completely. "I cannot believe this," Daniel said softly as they walked. "The child I saved is now a princess, leading her people. The galaxy is one smaller and larger at the same time. Strange, isn't it?" "It is strange," Lyra agreed. "But it is also comforting to know that the one who saved me still exists, that I can speak to you, that you are here. I never thought I would see you again." Daniel stopped walking and looked at her. "I never thought I would see you again either. And yet, here we are. It feels right somehow, as if the stars themselves guided us back together." Lyra smiled faintly. "It feels right," she whispered. Her heart was full yet cautious. She was a princess and the galaxy was still full of danger. Yet the presence of Daniel, the human who had once saved her life, brought a calm she had not felt in years. The council meetings continued, but the bond between Lyra and Daniel grew stronger. They discussed plans for trade, for alliances, and for mutual understanding between humans and her empire. But beneath the politics, there was an unspoken connection, a shared memory, a silent promise that neither could forget. One evening, after a long day of negotiations, Daniel found Lyra alone on the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and the galaxy seemed quiet for the first time in decades. "Princess," he said softly, "I want you to know. Saving you all those years ago was the right thing. I did not know then what it would mean, but seeing you now, I understand. You are remarkable." Lyra felt a flush rise to her cheeks. "And you gave me everything without knowing it. You saved not just my life, but my future, my chance to lead, to grow, to make a difference." They stood together, the memory of fire, smoke, and fear now replaced with a sense of calm and trust. The galaxy outside was vast and unknown, but in this moment, the distance between human and alien, between past and present, seemed to disappear. Daniel looked at her, his voice low. "Do you ever think about that day? About us? Back then? All the time, Lyra admitted. I remember every detail I could. Your hand, your voice, the way you moved, and I never forgot it. And now seeing you again, it is like the galaxy gave me a second chance. Daniel nodded, his own heart heavy with emotion. I remember too. I thought I'd lost you forever. I never imagined we would meet like this, in peace after everything. For a long time they simply stood there, gazing at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly, full of danger, wonder, and possibility. Yet for the first time Lyra felt hope, not just for her people but for herself, and for the human who had saved her all those years ago. And slowly, a plan began to form in her mind. The galaxy had changed, humans had returned, and the Empire faced new challenges. But with Daniel by her side, with the memory of that single act of courage binding them, she knew they could face anything. Together, they could bridge the gap between worlds, build trust, and perhaps change the course of history. The days passed quickly. Lyra and Daniel continued their talks, exploring both the ship and her planet. The bond between them grew, a mixture of respect, memory, and something deeper neither fully understood yet. Each shared story, each laugh, each memory of the past strengthened the connection. And as night fell over the planet, Lyra looked at the stars and whispered softly, "Thank you for everything, for saving me, for being here, for being you." Far away, Daniel thought the same words in his mind, feeling the weight of years and the promise of something more. Neither knew what the future held, but both understood that their meeting was no accident. The past, the memory, and the galaxy itself had brought them together for a reason. The human and the princess, once separated by war and time, now stood on the edge of a new beginning, united by courage, memory, and the quiet strength of a promise that had lasted across the stars. The following weeks were filled with tension. Lyra's empire was curious and cautious about the humans. The council debated every move, every word, while Lyra and Daniel worked together to show that the humans came in peace. But not all leaders were ready to trust. Some whispered that humans were dangerous, that they might have hidden motives, or that their return could bring war. Lyra tried to focus on the bigger picture. She wanted peace. She wanted to learn from Daniel and his people. Yet beneath her calm exterior, her heart beat faster whenever he was near. She still remembered the fire, the rubble, and the hand that had held hers all those years ago. She had never forgotten him. And now, seeing him again, she realized how deeply the memory had stayed with her. One day, during a council meeting, an envoy from a neighboring system arrived. He was tall and proud, his uniform bright and adorned with medals. "Princess Lyra," he said, "we have heard rumors. Humans are here, and you entertain them in your palace. Do you forget the wars they once waged?" Lyra stood, her voice firm but calm. "We do not forget. But we also do not live in fear of a species that has returned peacefully. We must judge by actions, not by the memory of the past." The envoy shook his head, unconvinced. "Memory matters. Humans are strong and we cannot trust them. One wrong move and the galaxy may burn again." Lyra nodded politely but ignored his warning. She knew Daniel and she trusted him. Not blindly, but because she had seen the human's courage and honor. She remembered the day he had saved her, risking his own life without thought of reward. That act alone spoke more than words could. After the meeting, she asked Daniel to walk with her through the palace gardens. The alien flowers glowed softly in the evening light, casting long shadows on the paths. Daniel followed her, carrying himself with the calm confidence that had first drawn her memory all those years ago. "You handled the council well," he said. "Not everyone believes in peace, but you spoke with truth." Lyra smiled faintly. "I cannot let fear rule my decisions. My people need allies, not enemies. And I need to understand you, Daniel. I need to know who you are now and how your people live." Daniel looked at her, a seriousness in his eyes. "We survived. For centuries we hid in remote systems, careful to avoid detection. We rebuilt what we could, learned from mistakes, and prepared for a chance to return. And now, here we are." Lyra nodded, her thoughts turning inward. She had been a child when he saved her, powerless and afraid. But now she had a voice, a role, and the chance to bridge two worlds. Yet part of her wondered if the Council, the Empire, and even the galaxy were ready for this reunion. Later that night, she returned to her chambers and sat by the window. The twin moons reflected on the water below, and the stars stretched endlessly above. Her mind replayed the memory of that day, the fire, the rubble, and the hand that had held hers. She remembered the fear and the hope, the promise that someone would protect her, and now the human who had done so stood beside her, alive and real. Daniel knocked softly at her door. "May I come in?" he asked. "Yes," Lyra replied, her voice quiet but welcoming. He entered, carrying a small book. "I thought you might like this," he said, handing it to her. "It is a record of human history, our culture, and our people. I thought you might find it interesting." Lyra took the book carefully, flipping through pages filled with images and words. "Thank you," she said. "I want to understand your people, the ones who saved me." Daniel smiled faintly. "And I want to understand yours. The child I saved grew into a remarkable woman. You are strong, wise, and compassionate. I want to learn how you became this way." They spoke for hours, sharing stories of their lives, of triumphs and failures, of worlds visited and dangers faced. Lyra realized how much they had in common despite the differences in species. Both had known fear, both had known loss, and both had survived against odds that seemed impossible. Days later, Daniel invited Lyra to inspect the human fleet. The ships were enormous, each built for survival and speed. Lyra walked the decks, seeing the engines, the weapons, and the living quarters. Soldiers greeted her respectfully, and engineers explained how everything worked. She marveled at the human skill and discipline. "Your people are incredible," she said. "I had no idea humans could accomplish so much in such a short time." Daniel nodded. "We had to survive. Every generation learned from the last. We had no choice but to become strong and careful." As they walked together, Lyra felt the old memory rise again. The small girl clinging to a hand, the fear, and the calm strength of someone who would not let her die. Now standing beside that same person, she realized that memory had shaped her life. It had given her courage, hope, and the belief that even in the darkest moments, someone would protect the innocent. The next council meeting brought more challenges. Some leaders refused to accept the humans, questioning Daniel's intentions. They demanded proof not only of his words but of his loyalty. Lyra stood firm. "We judge not by fear but by evidence. Daniel Hayes has shown honor, courage, and respect. He saved my life years ago, and he continues to show these qualities today. That is proof enough for me," the council murmured, some reluctant, some impressed. Lyra knew the path to peace would be difficult, but she also knew it was worth it. Daniel had given her life once. She would not let fear destroy the chance for a better future now. One evening, after a long day of negotiations, Lyra and Daniel sat together on the observation deck. The stars shimmered above and the galaxy seemed calm. Yet danger still lingered. Other species watched the humans return with suspicion. Some plotted, some whispered threats. Lyra knew that their reunion, as personal and powerful as it was, also carried political weight. "Do you ever worry about the risks?" she asked quietly. "The Council, the Empire, the galaxy? They may not accept humans so easily." Daniel nodded. "I worry, but I also know that fear cannot guide us. We must act with honor, with truth, and with courage. If we do, I believe we can succeed." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. "I remember the day you saved me," she said softly. "I remember every detail I could. Your hand, your voice, your courage. That memory gave me hope. And now seeing you again, I know we can face anything together." Daniel reached out, gently touching her hand. "And I remember too. I thought I had lost you forever. I never imagined we would meet like this in peace after everything. But here we are, and I will not let anything harm you now." The bond between them deepened, a mixture of memory, trust, and shared purpose. Lyra realized that the human who had once saved her life was now more than a memory. He was a partner, an ally, and a symbol of hope. As the days passed, tensions in the council slowly eased. The humans' actions proved their intentions were honest. Lyra's faith in Daniel and in the humans remained unshaken. She began to plan ways to strengthen ties, to bridge the gap between her empire and the returning human fleet. One night, alone in her chambers, she held the small pendant Daniel had given her years ago. The silver star glimmered softly in the moonlight. She remembered the fear, the rubble, and the small hand that had held hers, and she realized something profound. That single act of courage, that simple choice to protect a child, had changed the course of her life, and now, perhaps, the course of the galaxy. Daniel stood outside, waiting quietly. When Lyra emerged, he greeted her with a soft smile. Together they walked into the night, stars reflecting in their eyes, minds filled with the memory of the past and the promise of the future. And in that quiet moment, Lyra understood fully. The human who had saved her as a child was not only her savior but also her guide, her ally, and her hope. Together, they would face the challenges ahead, and together, they would shape a future neither could have imagined years ago, when fire and smoke had surrounded a frightened girl and a boy who chose to act with courage. The day had come. The human fleet, led by Commander Daniel Hayes and Princess Lyra's empire, faced a moment that could decide the future of the galaxy. The council of her people had gathered, along with representatives from nearby systems. There was tension in the air, suspicion, and curiosity. The humans were still unknown to most, and even with Daniel's history and Lyra's words, trust had to be earned. Lyra stood at the front of the council chamber, her posture calm, her eyes steady. Behind her, Daniel waited, as confident and composed as he had always been. His presence reminded her of that distant day when she was a small child, terrified in the ruins and yet held safe by his hand. The memory of that moment had stayed with her all these years, shaping her into who she was now. Honored representatives, Lyra began, her voice clear and strong. We face a choice. The humans before us are not the destroyers our history once feared. They have returned after centuries in exile, not seeking war but life, understanding, and cooperation. One human, Commander Daniel Hayes, saved my life when I was a child. I can speak for his character, for his honor, and for the intentions of his people. Some council members exchanged uneasy glances. A few whispered under their breath, doubt written clearly on their faces. But others leaned forward, curiosity and hope mingled with cautious trust. Daniel stepped forward. We have come not to conquer, but to build a future together. For centuries, humanity survived in secret, learning from mistakes, growing strong not for war, but to ensure life and justice can survive in the galaxy. We offer peace, knowledge, and partnership, and I vow today that I will personally protect the interests and safety of all here, including Princess Lyra and her people. There was silence. Lyra could feel it in her bones, the weight of the moment. The room was filled with history, fear, hope, and the possibilities of the future. Then slowly a council elder rose. He was old, his hair white as starlight, his face lined with decades of experience. Princess Lyra, he said, we have heard your words and seen the actions of this human. The story you tell is remarkable. To have been saved as a child and to witness that same person return alive and honorable. It is more than anyone could have expected. Yet the galaxy is still fragile. We must choose carefully. Lyra met his gaze steadily. I understand, Elder. I ask you to judge not only by history, but by what you see today. Humans have shown respect, honor, and courage. Commander Hayes is proof of their character. I trust him with my life. I ask you to consider that as well. The council deliberated for hours. Representatives questioned Daniel, asked for proofs, for assurances, for guarantees. Daniel answered calmly, honestly, and with clarity. Lyra observed him closely, remembering the small boy who had carried her through fire and rubble, and she realized that the man before her was shaped by that same courage. He had not changed. He had grown, but the core, the integrity, the bravery, the willingness to protect the innocent remained. Finally, the elder spoke again. We will allow this alliance to proceed under strict terms. Humans will have a place in our trade, our councils, and our systems, but all actions will be monitored, and trust will grow with time. Lyra felt a rush of relief. She had fought for this moment, not for politics alone, but for the recognition of courage, honor, and the bonds that can exist between species. Daniel's hand brushed hers as he stepped beside her, a silent acknowledgement of the shared victory. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Lyra turned to Daniel. It is done, she said softly. The council has agreed. Peace is possible, and you are truly here with me. Daniel smiled, his eyes reflecting the distant stars. I am here, Lyra, and I will not leave. Not now, not ever. For the first time since their reunion, Lyra allowed herself to remember fully. The child she had been, clinging to a strong hand in the ruins, was no longer lost. That moment had not only saved her life but had shaped the course of the galaxy. And now the man who had saved her stood with her as an ally, a friend, and more. The news of the alliance spread quickly. Other species took notice. Some were skeptical, some hopeful, and some intrigued. But the demonstration of trust between the humans and Lyra's empire began to reshape opinions. Humanity, thought to be extinct, had returned not with war but with honor. The galaxy had underestimated them, and now it had to take notice. One evening, Lyra and Daniel walked through the palace gardens. The twin moons hung low in the sky, casting silver light on the flowers. The air was cool and fragrant. They spoke quietly, enjoying the calm after the long days of tension and negotiation. "You changed everything," Lyra said softly. "Not just for me, but for the galaxy. Your courage saved my life, and now it is shaping the future of all our worlds." Daniel shook his head. "I only did what anyone would do. I could not leave you behind. That choice, it led to more than I could have imagined. And now seeing you here, alive, leading your people, I see the full meaning of that day." Lyra looked up at him, her eyes bright. "I have always remembered you. Even when I was scared, even when I had responsibilities and duties, I remembered the human who saved me. That memory kept me strong." Daniel reached for her hand. "And I have always remembered you too. I thought I lost you. I never imagined we would meet again, and under these circumstances, in peace, it is more than I could have hoped for." They walked in silence for a while, the stars stretching endlessly above them. The galaxy had changed, but their bond remained, stronger than ever. The memory of fire and rubble had grown into trust, respect, and a quiet understanding that some things, courage, kindness, and honor, never fade. Weeks turned into months. The alliance grew stronger. Trade routes opened, technology was shared, and understanding spread. Humans and Lyra's people learned from each other, building a relationship founded on trust and respect. And in the midst of this growing peace, Lyra and Daniel grew closer, not just as leaders, but as two people who shared a bond forged in a single act of courage long ago. One evening, Lyra stood at the balcony of her palace looking at the stars. Daniel joined her, silent but present. She felt the warmth of his hand as he took hers, a reminder of the first day he had saved her all those years ago. "The galaxy is changing," she said softly, "and we are part of that change." Daniel nodded. "Yes, but the most important change is that we are here together. We survived, we endured, and now we can shape a future that is better than the past." Lyra smiled, a smile that carried relief, joy, and a quiet sense of destiny. "I never thought I would see you again," she admitted. "And now, here you are. I am grateful, Daniel. Grateful for everything." He looked at her, his eyes steady and kind. "And I am grateful too. That day in the ruins, it changed both of us. I saved a life, and in return I gained hope, purpose, and a future I never imagined." The two of them stood together, hands clasped, gazing at the galaxy. The stars shone brightly as if celebrating the moment, a moment when memory, courage, and destiny had come together. The past, with its fear and chaos, had given way to a future of trust and possibility. For Lyra, the memory of the child she had been, and the human who had saved her, had always been a quiet guide. And now, with Daniel by her side, that memory had become a living reality. They had survived, endured, and grown. The galaxy, once full of fear and uncertainty, now had a new path, one that would be shaped by courage, honor, and the bonds between worlds. And in that moment, standing together beneath the stars, Lyra and Daniel knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. The human who had saved a frightened child long ago had returned not just as an ally but as a partner, a friend, and a witness to the enduring power of courage and kindness. The galaxy would never forget. And neither would they.